Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is a show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Today, wherever you're listening, however you're listening, got to remember that part, right, Jason? 5-star review on Spotify, like and subscribe on YouTube, 5-star review, and say something really nice about me and my friend Jason here on Apple Podcasts. I have Jason Dennen. He is the author of 8 Days Till Sunrise. He is a triathlete, a skydiver, outdoor enthusiast, all-around great guy. Jason, how you doing today, man?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, Jason, is all mine. I told you I went skydiving once. We'll get into it. My experience probably a little different than yours. We'll get there. But Jason, first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Man, because it's a test. You know where you stand one way or another. If you're running and you run a marathon, either the clock doesn't lie. You ran 3 hours, you ran 4 hours. The result's the result. If you're playing team sports, you're team won or you lost. So it's a great way to measure yourself. So there's nothing better than doing that.
Yeah, I believe in what doesn't get measured can't be managed, right? The only way you can get better at really anything is to understand where you stand in the grand scheme of things, as you said, whether that's running, whether that's on the scoreboard. What is it about testing? Were you like a really good tester growing up and you just kind of want to keep subjecting yourself to that? Like, what is it like? Why do you like the test of sports, I guess?
Well, it allows you just to see where you're at and what improvements you can make, what you're lacking in, what you're not lacking in. And it gives you, an ultimate goal to get to where you want to get to. I mean, if you have that, race coming up on a certain date, it's not moving. It's coming. So if you're hurt, you're injured, you're doing great, it doesn't matter. That's the date. That's the cutoff time that you can't change. And it's time to see where you're at. See what you improved on maybe from the last time, or maybe you got worse. It's just the goal at the end, I think, is what motivates me to train or do whatever I need to do to get to that race day or game day.
I respect the heck out of that, man. A lot of people kind of float through life avoiding tests, float through life really trying to avoid goals. I don't really understand it. I set goals. I set very lofty goals. One thing about goals, you got to read them. If you don't read them or write them down, then they're just kind of in the ether a little bit. You got to remind yourself about what's going on. Appreciate my friend Rob Cressy for reminding me of that. I guess, what are some of your goals? What are you trying to test yourself on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, just to see kind of some of the stuff you got coming up?
Yeah, so I mean, right now with the book that I just wrote is to reach as many people and help people that are struggling through whatever they're struggling through in life, kind of share my message. So get whether the book or speaking to people or trying to just help them through, because I think a lot of people out there are struggling, and I think that's one thing we all have in common as human beings is at some point we're going to struggle. You don't have whatever that may be to you, and you're not alone. And sharing, a lot of times I used to never share my struggles, and maybe that was probably to my detriment. And realizing going through what we'll talk about later, about the book and the accident I went through, really, I had a responsibility to share the things that I was going through in life to help other people. So it's really spreading that message. Sports-wise, I'm still biking, still running, climbing the occasional mountain and rocks. So, I'm always looking for something to test me and put me in the hurt zone and see if I still got it. So
good for you, man. Yeah, not the hurt zone's not my favorite place to be. I hop on this Peloton every once in a while, pretty much like 5 days a week. I try and make sure I'm staying consistent with it, and yeah. Sometimes my legs hurt a lot afterwards, but you gotta embrace it. You gotta really get into it. Can't really say I'm climbing too many mountains, unfortunately, but it sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm glad you get to do it. So let's get into the conversation around the book then, right? Like that's why we're here. I want you to help share your story. Your goal is to expand and get in front of more people, man. How awesome is this that I get to help you do it? That makes me feel good. That makes you feel good. If we can affect just one person through this conversation, I will consider that a win. Hopefully, we can affect a couple more, and then the network effect starts. But talk to me a little bit, Jason. We have the book 8 Days Till Sunrise. Big skydiving accident. Mm-hmm. Some stuff went wrong. I guess you tell me. Talk to me about the idea, not the idea, the unfortunate event that then led to this book to allow you to help many, many, many people along the way.
Sure. So I had been an experienced skydiver, a couple hundred jumps. It was an ordinary Saturday, went out for a trail run, came back, headed to the airport, got 2 jumps in that day. And on the third jump, I was coming in for a landing. I was 150 feet off the ground. And all of a sudden, and I live near the mountains in Colorado, so a huge wind comes off the mountains, picks me up and slams me forward directly through a cattle fence, a wire fence, and then to the back of an airplane hangar, going like 30 miles an hour. So I hit it and blacked out. They called the Flight for Life helicopter. I hit so hard on the left side of my body that 10 of my 12 ribs broke, impacted my heart, and my heart basically exploded out of where it normally sits, called the pericardial sac, which is just protects your heart. I'm not a cardiologist, but that's my best definition. But and it ended up on the right side of my chest, all twisted up. They Flight for Life me to the nearest level 1 trauma center, emergency surgery, life-saving surgery. The doctors would later say that they had never performed that surgery on anyone before to fix their heart because no one ever comes in alive with that injury. So 8 days in a coma after that, woke up from the coma, 3.5 months in the hospital, had to relearn to walk. Then my doctor said, you may never run again. And 1 day short of the 1-year anniversary of the crash, I raced in a triathlon to prove that to myself and kind of as a gift to the people that had helped me that, hey, my arm worked, my legs worked, my heart worked. So the story kind of goes through that. And then it also talks about, what do you do with a second chance of life when someone, when you wake up and your doctor tells you, well, you shouldn't be alive. Like, well, man, there's kind of some responsibility that goes with that to do more than what you're doing and, reassess your life and what path were you on before and what path should you get on.
I
So.
respect the hell out of that, man. That is an incredible story. Did you go over the reason why it's named 8 Days Till Sunrise? Did you say that? You didn't, I don't think.
No, so 8 Days Till Sunrise just talks about the 8 days in the coma. So that morning when I went on the trail run, I saw the sunrise, and where I live, there's something called the Flatirons, these big rock faces, beautiful sunrise reflecting off there, super bright. And then the coma was a really dark place, literally and figuratively. The lots of nightmares and things like that you went through. So it was really a dark place for those 8 days. And then when I opened my eyes for the first day of the coma, the sun's coming through my window of the ICU. So that's the first sunrise I saw again after waking up. And then the doctor's over me and he says, "You're lucky to be alive." And then I kind of put my hand up and gave him a little bit of a high five and said, "Hey, thanks." And he kind of looked at me like, I'm not sure he gets a lot of high fives from people waking up from comas, but he got one there. So
I don't know why, man.
It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, more gratitude. Why not? If someone said, "Hey, you're lucky to be alive," like, yeah, if I can move my hand, high five's probably one of the first things I'm going to do. Yeah, or fist bump, nice and easy. So I like your style, man. I like your style, and so I'm very interested in the coma piece for a second. I didn't realize, like,
Sure.
not that you were conscious, but like you have memories. I don't even know what you'd call them at that point, but like you have recollection of actually being in the coma.
Oh, absolutely. So, I'm not an expert on comas, but I was intubated. So they put me into that coma to prevent me from, I guess, moving around and re-injuring my heart and whatever the case may be. So for me, what it was is very vivid dreams the whole time. Hundreds upon hundreds, and I'm not someone that normally remembers their dreams, but these, to this day, I could tell you, exact dreams. So all of them kind of had the same theme in terms of I knew I was in bad shape, even though I blacked out when I hit that building. I really didn't know what was wrong with me, but in the coma, bad shape, no one wanted to help me. They were just leaving me for dead in all these different dreams, same kind of theme, and to me, it was kind of a test or a temptation of, well, did I really want to live? And you're going to have to make that decision before you know what's wrong with you. So do you want to go back to the life that you maybe weren't super happy with and do something with it? Or, no one's going to know if I just gave up and died because they would just, he died from the injuries. But I knew what was going on and I was going to keep fighting. So, I was kind of tormented by dreams until it got to a point where I was just like, I've had enough of these dreams. I'm getting out of here. And that's when I opened my eyes, was the next memory after that last dream. And then the doctor said, "Hey, you're lucky to be alive." So
that is intense, man. I had no idea that that's kind of how it works. So Gosh darn. Thank you for doing that,
Yeah.
and appreciate it, because again, you're here now to affect and impact many lives, and I do appreciate that very much. I wish we had more good people like yourself on planet Earth, because we all got a story to tell. There's always a way that we can impact others. So, wow. That is intense. Didn't realize that piece. So appreciate you letting me know I could ask you all these questions, because that's definitely what I was interested in.
Yeah, a
So
little bit of PTSD, you know.
yeah, I'm sorry about that, bud, but I do appreciate it. So
No, it's good.
you have
All good.
you're coming out of this coma, as you said. You kind of have this life, and now you get this second chance. I guess what were some of those initial second chance thoughts that you had? Were saying like, okay, shit, like, all right, let's keep going, not do this again, right? But let's keep going. What are some of those initial thoughts that you get, like, oh, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to do, like, what are some of those things that are going through your mind initially?
Yeah. Well, initially it was, and my sister at the time was sitting next to me, my hospital bed, and she's like, this is, you didn't live for no reason. She's like, there's a reason. And I was like, what? I was like, that wind hitting me at 150 feet, which is like the worst place it could have hit me, because you couldn't turn away from anything, because if you turn at that altitude, you'll dive your parachute directly in the ground, and I probably would have died. So basically, when that wind hit me, I had about 5 seconds of landing. I couldn't do anything. So I was like, yeah, that wind hitting me at 150 feet couldn't have been a coincidence. Like there was a higher meaning than just, could have hit me at 2,000 feet and nothing would have happened. So going with that, I was like, man, what am I going to do with this? And, when I started telling the story, because everyone that would come in the hospital room, and when you're in a hospital, you meet a lot of people, because there's so many different shifts with nurses or CNAs or whoever comes in there. And especially when I was in the room myself, they would come in and ask. They were kind of apprehensive, like, is this too soon? And I guess they made the decision it wasn't too soon. I don't know. They didn't ask me that first, but they would ask me about the accident. And I realized kind of the effect that it had on people just by telling the story. And even the good part didn't happen. I guess survival was the good part. But I mean, I didn't even come back yet. I was still just laying there and broken. And it was like sharing the story allowed other people to open up about whatever things they were going through in life. And at first, at some point, I was like, man, I'm kind of tired of telling the story, because I kind of give myself PTSD every time I was doing it, laying there. And then I realized after a while, I was like, wait a minute. What I'm noticing is the reaction that people would give when I would tell the story. I was like, it seems like in some way it's helping someone else just by just telling the story. I was like, maybe that's what I should be doing, because if it's having this effect on, someone that's coming in and just asking what happened, and I just talk for a couple minutes and they start sharing their struggles, and I was like, maybe there's something to it. And it took me a little while of laying in a hospital and just laying there to kind of go, maybe that's the path. Maybe I should be sharing it with other people, and maybe it could help other people. And those were it came slowly, but I think by the time I got out of the hospital, I was like, no, I think there's something to this, and there's this responsibility that goes along with it. So.
Yeah, whenever you as an outside person, you hear about some of these stories, right? We just had the very extremely unfortunate event over in Turkey, where we had that Turkey and Syria, if I'm not mistaken. I apologize, my geography is terrible, but we had all those earthquakes, and right, you hear it's very unfortunate, but then you hear the incredible news of they pulled this person and that person out after however many days, right? And you hear that and you feel it, and unfortunately, because it's on the other side of the world, it's at arm's length. But if I run into somebody and I have a conversation with someone that's like, yeah, no, I should definitely be dead, like 2 days ago, zero reason why I'm still here, that's gonna hit home. That's gonna, like, someone's gonna sit down and be like, I could be that guy, right? Like, maybe it's not skydiving, but it could be, anything else that happens in life at any point in time, right? So by doing that, it allows people to realize there's always a second chance. There's always another opportunity. There's always something else that can be done. Maybe it's in your control. Maybe it's out of your control, like your event was. But the opportunity to take advantage and really put forth what you want in your life, I think, is one of the most important things that people can take from a story like yours, which, hey, just because, you didn't have that skydiving, just because I didn't have that skydiving accident doesn't mean I can't go through life saying, damn, why don't I try and infect more people? Why don't I try and, reach out and help and do whatever I can to be of service to others? Because maybe I just got lucky and didn't have to go through, thank you. I didn't have to go through that skydiving event. I could have just heard the story and been completely affected by it.
Yeah. And I think it's weird. Sometimes people will like, they break their finger or something. They go, my finger really hurts, and they're talking to me, and they kind of say, they're like, oh wait, I'm sorry, it was only a finger. I know you went through everything. And I was like, no, 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 you're allowed to talk about your broken finger to me. I don't think less because you only broke your finger. I was like, it's probably better you only broke your finger instead of your whole body. But they got to apologize. Like, you don't apologize. It hurts. I get it. You went through something tough. You talk to me about it. I welcome you to talk about it. It helps you go through it
And
to
that's
bounce off someone else.
most people need a sounding board, man. You're 100% correct. Like, it's just nice to talk to somebody about whatever is going on, because as you said, everyone's struggles are different. Where you came from, your experiences of life, that's what kind of gets you there. So through, you wake up, you start having some of these thoughts. Absolutely fantastic. When rehab comes around, when the however many months of surgery and having to relearn how to walk again,
Hmm.
so this must have just been awful. Like, relearning how to walk. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't move my arm, and I'm like, damn, this sucks. And then you fall back asleep, right? Like, think of how having to relearn to walk. It's just such a foreign concept to anybody that's just been doing it for so long, right? So, with all these awful, awful, awful struggles that you went through, what was that like? Like, what are some of the things that you're thinking? Who are you mother effing? Like, why did I have to do this? Like, how are you dealing with and coping with, okay, you went through this awful accident. Now you have to, like, wake up, and now you have to just relearn how to do everything again. Would have been nice to just go through the accident and be able to do everything, but no, you're not lucky enough, Jason. You get to relearn how to do everything, go through all this rehab. That part must have been almost as bad as the accident itself, I assume, right?
I mean, it gives you a whole appreciation of things you never think about, right? I mean, when I went to the rehab hospital the first day so there was about 10 weeks where I couldn't move at all, just lay in the bed. That's it. And first day of the rehab hospital, they're like, okay, you're going to have to get into this wheelchair. And I said, okay. So so you have to kind of wiggle your way to the edge of the bed, and I couldn't use my legs still because I couldn't put any weight on it because of the injuries, and so you're trying to drag yourself. And I realized the first time I tried to sit up that I couldn't sit up. And like, when have you thought about trying to sit up yourself besides probably being a child, and you have the same problems because you're like, I don't have the strength. I can't even sit up. I was like, I'm trying to turn on my side, and I'm like, I can't even turn on my side. So it's humbling, and you don't take it for granted anymore. You're just like, the first time I stood up, I was just like, oh, it was like a glorious feeling. You're just like, they put the wheelchair to the edge of these like parallel bars to kind of steady you if you want. And they're like, all right, stand up. And it had been 3 months. And I wiggled to the edge, put my feet down, and you would have thought I was, squatting like 600 pounds because my legs were shaking like out of control. Because, like, when you don't use your muscles for a certain amount of time, like, they completely wither away. And so I stand up, and I'm just like, and I pop my hips out, and I'm just like, whoa, this is like how it's to be 5'10" again instead of sitting in the wheelchair. And yeah, in the first couple steps, it was it was just like super shaky legs, and take a couple steps, they bring the wheelchair down. So ever since that happened, you're just like, there's not another day I want to go by without walking, because you're just like, it's a completely different perspective kind of on the world, or and oddly enough, I would say, like, everything you learn in life contributes to everything you're doing. And even though skydiving broke me a little bit or a lot, it was the way you want it, the way you want to look at it. So when they gave me the X-rays on my lower body, it was so they bring me back to the hospital because I had to go somewhere else to get them. And so I knew the news was going to get back to my therapist. And so I'm sitting down at lunch, eating food, and then they're like, do you want to try to walk today? And I was like, do you want me to try to walk now? I was like, yes, let's go. And it kind of felt like, so you get a certain feeling skydiving when the plane gets to altitude, the door opens, and you're like, all right, now it's ready to go out, and this is when it really starts. And I had that same feeling when I was about to walk, because I was like, I rehearsed in my head, like, for weeks, like, what's it going to be like to walk for the first time? How are my legs going to feel? How is my pelvis going to feel, which is broken, and all these other things. And it was just like that super excitement of, like, this is going to happen one way or another. I might fall on my face. It might go well. It might go medium. I don't really know, but I'm jumping out of the plane. So, put my wheelchair there and let's see what happens. So it's odd how past things in your life help you go through, other things in your life. Like I say, skydiving saved my life, and it almost took it too. But I wouldn't be the same person unless I was a skydiver. So.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
man, and I think that's such a great way of looking at it. When the one time I went skydiving, I tell people about when they open up the door, and it's like, what are we doing? Like, why am I doing this? This makes absolutely no sense. But it was one of the most incredible experiences, longest 60 seconds, one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And I think you do a great job of making that analogy between, hey, this was my skydive for the longest time leading up to it. You were so excited for that moment. You were so excited to get back to just doing that thing that you love doing. It's as simple as walking, right? And again, it's humbling and it brings new light, new experience. I'm sure when you wake up every day, it's a little different than it was before, and I think that's the important part. And at least acknowledging and understanding that is one of the more important things. So kudos and congratulations to you for that, man. And so with those experiences, like, how much did you lean on being a skydiver, being an outdoor enthusiast, being an athlete growing up to really help contribute to getting back to where you were, that discipline, the persistence, all these things that we learn through sports that you're then able to say, like, okay, now I'm going to take that to just, getting back to quote unquote normal?
Oh yeah, it contributed a huge part to recovery. When I woke up from the coma, a few minutes after that, my dad was at my bedside and he said, this is going to be just like one of your races. And I was halfway out of it on whatever, medications they had me on. So I wasn't, but I remember him saying that. And at that point, I didn't even know what my injuries were because I had just woken up and like I said, I blacked out when I hit the building. And my thought was like, no matter what happened to me, whatever it is, it's fixable without knowing what's wrong. Because he probably wouldn't have said that unless it was. So I was like, okay, so what I need to do is work really hard, do the things I've done before, and I'm going to get to some point. No, what the point is, who knows? But you'll never know what you can get to unless you put 100% of your energy and thousands of hours and things like that to get into it. So the way I really equate it to is, so I've done lots of triathlons prior to the accident, and like Ironman triathlon, 2.4 mile swim, 112 on the bike, marathon run. So we used to train for that. It would be like 10 months of training in this block. And, you're nowhere near where you need to be on the race day 10 months earlier, and you build it up little by little every day. Like the changes in your body are so small that it's hard even to measure on a daily basis. But there are changes happening. And you're cranking up the intensity, you're cranking up the volume month by month by month to meet it. There's some days you go through the training and you're just like, how am I ever going to get to, that race day? Because I felt terrible today. And that was like a fraction of what the race is. And then there's some days where you're just like, I'm killing it today. But either way, it's like, put your head back down and keep going, because race day is still 5 months away. And what you do today doesn't matter towards race day. And, you test yourself once in a while in the process to see where you're at. Hey, do you need to make changes? Is your training going well? Is it, do you need more sleep? All these factors that are going into it. So, weeks ago, I was talking to one of my friends and I kind of said, I feel like I had an unfair advantage in recovery in that I had all these tools and I knew what it was like to go to, a low fitness level or nowhere near race ready to race ready. And it was kind of like, I was never certainly broken like this before, but it was the same mentality. It was like an obsessive mentality. It was like, especially when I got home from the hospital, it was like 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if I wasn't rehabbing, I was reading about rehabbing, trying to figure out other things that I could do better, or talking to the physical therapist or the doctor. And it's like, similar to how you do a triathlon, an Ironman. It's like you're obsessed, and it's just like, that's how you're going to do it. So you put your head down and just keep going. And then at the end, you're just like, well, did I make the goal? Did I not? You're never going to know unless you put all the work in.
Yep, race day. You gotta wait. You gotta wait for that one day, and that's awesome, man. I didn't realize you were running Ironman triathlons. that's a whole nother level of triathlon. So this whole time you've been, I've been thinking quote unquote normal triathlon, but no, you're doing these ultra super high endurance events, and I think that makes it even the analogy even better, because you're right, you're going the amount, the 10 months, as you said, to get from point A to race day. It's every single day, it's such minuscule and small amounts. I'm sure during your recovery, that's what it felt like too, right? As you said, like every single day is like, I don't feel any different. The doctor's like, no, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're going to get there. Then I'm sure a month later you can look back and be like, wow, I've come significantly farther. And then maybe there's some down days along the way, but 6 months out, 7 months out, you're able to say, holy shit, like we're kind of getting close to this thing. We're actually, race day's right around the corner. The date's not changing, as you said before. You have to wait for that day, and when that day comes, it is what you have to do. And so I think that's an awesome analogy again. And so with that, you said you ran a triathlon one day before the year mark of the accident. Was that an Ironman?
That wasn't an Ironman.
Okay. I was going to say, that would have been absolutely... You should not be on my show. You should be on ESPN. No offense to my show. You should be somewhere else, but that's okay.
No, I definitely wasn't that far along that I could have done an Ironman at that point. It was an Olympic distance, which is like 0.9 mile swim, 30-mile bike, and 6.2-mile run. And it was quite difficult, and I went quite slow. But, that wasn't the point at the end. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, kudos and congratulations. At what point did you, as you said, the doctor said you might not be able to run again. At what point did you realize and say, hey, like, not only do I think I'll be able to run again, I think I'll be able to complete a triathlon, whatever the numbers may be. At what point did you put that thought into the back of your head? Like, how far along in the rehab are you to the point where you're like, well, now I have a new goal. I want to, prior to the 1 year mark, I want to run an entire triathlon. How do you even conjure that up, and then how do you start to, I guess, execute on that idea?
Sure. Well, the idea of the triathlon came about a week after waking up from the coma. So I woke up. You had these real quiet nights in the hospital, and you're just by yourself a lot. And, when you're laying in bed, you kind of, especially when you're highly medicated, you're in and out of sleeping or passing out or whatever you want to call it, because there's so much noise. I was just laying there, and I'm just like, and who knows, maybe I wasn't even totally with it. But I came up with the idea, and I said, what does recovery mean to me? And I knew it was like 20 broken bones, 5 organs that had to be fixed. And I'm just like, well, what do I consider back, right? And I'm just like, well, I had the connection to triathlon. I knew how to do it. So I'm just like, well, that meant my arm worked, my leg worked, my heart worked if I could do a triathlon. So, that went to the background for a while because there was tons of pain and tons of everything else that went with rehab. And then picking it up, I'm at home recovering, and the doctor, so I go for a follow-up on my legs and my pelvis, because originally I wasn't fully healed when they allowed me to start walking, but they said it'll help you heal more if you put some weight on the not fully completely healed bones. So I go back, and the doctor finally says, okay, you're fully healed with the bones. And I said, well, can I run? What that doctor didn't know was 3 months earlier, when they first cleared me to walk, my first question to that doctor was, well, how much longer before I get to run again? Because I knew in the back of my head I was doing the triathlon. I just didn't tell anybody else, because I didn't want those looks of like, yeah, you tap on the head, or, oh, I'm sure you'll do it someday. I was like, I'm doing it, I'm definitely doing it. It's not some pipe dream. It's going to happen. So the first doctor's the one who was like, he looked at me, he was like, that wasn't a logical question that you should be asking me as the second question after, like, I'm allowing you to walk for the first time. And he looked at me, he's like, you may never run. So advance of 3 months, the second doctor who did my leg, because I had a couple of orthopedic surgeons, he's like, he didn't know what the other doctor said, but he was like, you could run if you want, I guess. It's not going to feel like your real leg. I was like, wow, this guy's a super motivational speaker. Luckily, he's a great surgeon. But maybe he actually was a genius, because he just told me what I wanted to hear that he didn't think was going to happen. So I was like, all right. So I'm driving home from that doctor's office, and on the way home, I'm like, what's going to happen when I get home? I'm putting the running shoes on. And I thought about that doctor 3 months earlier that said, you might never run again. I was like, well, we're going to see today. And so I get home, put the running shoes on, and I mean, it was more like a wobble or a waddle. It wasn't running. My body was just so tight in the lower body, but it was more than a walk, and I was like, all right, that's day one. Day two, we go another 50 feet. It was only 50 feet on day one. It wasn't like some, I'm going to go run a mile. I was like, nah, 50 feet was enough. And I was like, okay, 50 feet every day I'm going to go. And then a couple weeks after that, I'm keeping doing the running workouts, and instead of 30 seconds at a time, I'm doing like 50 seconds at a time, and I'm running outside. And so I was like, man, what do I think? So I guess to back up, originally I said it was going to be 2 years before I raced. So this is before the year. And I go, I was like, what am I capable of this year? Because I'm always like a goal-oriented person. So I want something, a carrot ahead that I'm going for. If you're just not going for anything, it's like, well, how much rehab is enough? Or when am I enough? It's like, well, the race is like, there's a start time, there's a stop time. You either make it or you don't. You make so it's like an absolute. And I want an absolute of what I can get to. So then I was like, okay, maybe I'll do a stroke and stride. And a stroke and stride is by the reservoir right where I live. It's like a practice after work to swim in the open water in a lake, which is different from swimming in a pool because you have to navigate, pick your head up, and all that kind of thing. And then there's a 5K run afterwards. So I was about 3 months out from that, and I was like, well, I think I could maybe that's hard to do, but I think I could do that. And I finally get clearance on a second surgery I had on my elbow that week, and I was like, okay, I could start swimming again. So I talked to my mom on the phone, and usually I wouldn't tell her exactly what I was doing because she was always worried I was going to break myself again. So I'd like do things for a while that were new and then break it to her. And then she's like, you're going to hurt yourself. Like, yeah, but I've been running for a couple weeks. So, I'm not getting hurt yet. So, and I never kind of understood like why she was so concerned. I mean, granted, besides crashing into a building at a high rate of speed, but I thought she was just being my mom, which is understandable. And well, and she goes on in this conversation to say, well, the reason I'm so concerned about you is because a week after you woke up from that coma, they took us aside and told us what the prognosis was. They're like, you're not going to walk for at least 6 months, or he's not going to walk for 6 months. Now they never told me any of this, and they're like, you're not going to go back to work for at least a year. So they never told me that. So I always assumed I should be healing way faster than I was. I thought I was like way behind. I was like, I'm a terrible healer, but apparently I was going way faster than I should have been able to. Yeah. So I was like, wait a minute. If they said 6 months was when I was supposed to walk, well, I walked in 3. Then I was like, they told me I wasn't going to go back to work for a year. I went back in 7 months. So I was like, I predicted 2 years for this triathlon. I was like, I'm not waiting 2 years. I'm going to do it this year. So I there was a race I had done in June years before, like I think it was like 7 years before. And I was like, that takes place in June. And I look it up on the computer when I get home from that running workout, and I go, oh, wait a minute. That happens 1 day short of the year anniversary. And all of a sudden, I just get obsessed with the 1 year anniversary and like, oh, they told me I couldn't do this. I couldn't do this. So I'm going to show that what I can do. And I had 3 months to train, and I was coming from like, level 0 in terms of fitness because you're laying in the bed for so long. Your heart, is not in shape. So it takes a while for you to come back, but I was just like, okay. And I had no idea whether I could do it or not, or whether it was even realistic. I really didn't care because only way I could find out was if I signed up and did it. It's like, put your money where your mouth is. Like I said, I'm going to do it. I put my money out there. Race day is coming. So I better get going. So I never knew I was going to be able to do it till I, showed up and did it.
I love that, man. I think the being 2 times as fast at recovery, it turns out, is pretty important to this story, right? The fact that, they said 6 months, you started walking in 3, go back to work in 12, you're working 7. I think that piece of it, when your mom told you, she told you at the perfect time, right? To allow you to say, wait a second, so I'm actually doing really well at this, so what else can I do? And as you said, you always kind of needed that coal, that carrot to be able to go after, and it's like, hey, why not? 1 year, the day before. What a perfect day to culminate that 365 days, right? You unfortunately have the accident day 1, and you run that race on day 365, and then you can start over anew when the calendar turns again there. So I think that part is absolutely fantastic. And so you're able to run this triathlon.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos and congratulations. As you said, maybe not your best time, but that's not the point of the triathlon. The point is to see and push yourself and do it and prove people wrong and make you feel a lot better about it. When did you decide? I know we kind of spoke about it a little bit, but when did you decide I want to put pen to paper and I want to tell other people this story, and I want to give people the opportunity, if anyone is struggling with anything, kind of a comparison to say, hey, I was able to struggle with this. Sure, what you're going through is very important, and it is a lot. Everyone's struggles are different, but here's some ways that maybe you can get through this with me while on my journey and what I went through as well.
Yeah. So when we're talking about purpose, and I kind of thought I'm gonna volunteer at a hospital and speak to people about what I went through and hopefully how that it can help them. And then I was at a speaking engagement and I finished up and someone came up to me afterwards and said, my friend's really struggling. They don't even leave their house. And I said, go visit them if you want. And they said, no, they won't even answer their door to let you in. And I kind of felt like I was missing something because I thought just speaking to people at speaking engagements was the path to help people. And you realize, or that day I realized, I said, it's only going to help someone who actually is there. Maybe there's people struggling at home that could benefit from the message or hopefully benefit from the message that aren't there or don't know about it, or, and they asked me, they're like, well, do you have anything that has your message on it? And I said, I don't. And I really, on the drive home that day, I was like, man, if I have to be doing more, because if I'm missing the people that my whole goal is to help, then I'm not doing enough. It's my responsibility to take it another step or do something else or find a way that I'm not contributing in the way I should be contributing. So I went home and said, well, it's time to, I guess if I had a book or something to give them, it could potentially help them and they could have read it in their own time when they wanted to. So I kind of went home and within a couple of days, I just got out my computer and started typing and kind of had the outline from the speech and kind of went from there.
That's awesome that you realize that. I think that's extremely important. As you said, you're doing the right thing by speaking. You're doing the right thing by getting in front of people, but then realizing that there's so many more people that you're not going to be able to get in front of, right? You're not Tony Robbins yet. You're not on TV. Unfortunately yet. We'll get you there one day. You're doing great here, so I see no reason why you can't be on TV soon, Jason. But I think it's really important for people to understand that you were able to take advantage of that situation, and now you have this opportunity. Now you have something to give to someone, right? Anyone that's at the event, take a book, right, and then give it to somebody else so that they can understand this message too, and I think that's a great way of doing it. What was the book writing process like? Did you always want to write a book? Was it difficult? Was it kind of hard for you to be able to put all the thoughts in correct order and, kind of jump around? I remember when I wrote my book, not a big deal. It was a lot of fun when I got to do it, and it was really cool, and I enjoyed it, but it was a very difficult process to do. So how were you able to get through this and really conjure up a coherent idea and message, as you've been talking about, to get people to understand what you went through and what they're going through isn't, the end of the world, and they can come through it too?
Yeah. So I think I'd been unknowingly writing it for a while now, because originally when I was preparing for speaking engagements, it was, I wrote everything. Basically, I spent a couple weeks and just sat down and wrote everything that I could potentially remember from the hospital. And really, there was things I didn't remember that were kind of rekeyed in my mind the more I wrote. I kind of just sat there quiet and just write. And then I'd go for a walk, and then all of a sudden another thought would come to me about something that probably I hid away for some good mental reason, so I didn't have to relive it again. And so I kind of had an outline of the book already, and I kind of just sat down and, it was like totally in the moment is how I describe it, and somewhat similar to a skydive, where it's like the only thing that matters is this second. Nothing behind it matters. Nothing ahead of it matters. Just this very second. And I would and that's kind of how I wrote. I was just like completely in the moment while I was writing, and I would just write as much as I could, and just get it out, and then go, and then just like, deep breath, it's over for tonight. So I kind of just sat down for a couple hours every night and just kept on writing until it was over. And similar to be obsessive about Ironman or anything else. It was just like, keep writing it until it's done. And I'm not, stopping until I finish it. Because, it was not easy to write just because you get finished and you're reliving like really dark things that you went through that were super tough. So you're reliving those darkest moments every single day. And I get finished and I'd go, why do I seem to be in a bad mood every time I finish writing? And I'm a little bit down. And after a couple of weeks, I go, you're reliving the hardest thing you ever went through in your entire life. And so yeah, but if it was to me, I'm willing to go through that if it helps someone else. So
Exactly.
it is what it is.
Yeah, you seem
I'm
like a
good
very
with
good
that.
person in that sense that you're willing to go through that, and not only speech-wise, right, but writing that down, as you said, reliving some of the worst parts of your life to try and help others. So, what is the goal of the book? How exactly are you trying to help others?
Yeah, it's talking about things I probably would not have talked about before the accident. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you're unwilling, or maybe to very few people, kind of confide in things you're struggling with. And in the book, I talk through the process of, it wasn't like I just woke up from the coma and I'm ready to rehab and everything's great and every day is a smile on my face. And because that's not the reality of it, man. There were really tough times. There were days where, I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to ever get back to this. I mean, there were days where, the therapist would come in and my left arm was from shoulder to wrist in a cast, and it was removable because I had an incision there too. And they would take it off and they'd move my arm. I mean, only an inch, and forcibly move it an inch. And I was on the verge of passing out from the pain. And she would leave, and I would go, man, moving my arm an inch. And I was, I'm on the verge of passing out. I was like, how am I going to get everything else to work? I was like, this is horrible. I mean, probably the most horrible pain I was through was when they would move my arm. So there was doubts. There weren't like, hey, this is all, this is great every day. It wasn't like I had to hit bottom before I started coming back. And part of it was I was putting so much pressure on myself to like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like I was going to all of a sudden spring up and start walking and being okay. And like, that wasn't a reality. And I had to give myself permission to go, you just have to get this much better every day. And that's what comes to racing and things like that. And you go, you're not jumping up and going to all of a sudden walk. Like that's not in the cards. That's not possible. And I was like, I gave myself permission to get a little bit better. And, I struggle through guilt too, because I'm the one who jumped out of the plane. No one told me to jump out of the plane. And jumping out of planes is amazing, and doing it that many times, and you learn a whole lot, and it's not about adrenaline. Maybe the first few are about adrenaline. There's way more to learn about skydiving than just adrenaline. But I'm the one who decided, and I got hurt, and a lot of other people had to pay for my decision. Because I can't imagine what it must have been like, when my family got the call, said, your son's in a coma, you better fly out to Denver because he might not live another day. When my friend who was my emergency contact, I mean, she got the call and she couldn't even walk. She had to get her sister to drive her to the hospital. She was the first person on scene. And the chaplain came up to her and to visit, to bring her up to the room, and she thought I was dead. She thought I died by the time from the call to when she got to the hospital. And he explained to her, no, I just need to prepare you for what you're about to see, because what you're about to see is going to be disturbing. And that was hard to go through. I mean, and when you're laying in bed and not being able to move for 10 weeks, there's not much you can think about other than the pain is the guilt. And, my parents were sitting next to me, and I'm just like, I feel horrible looking at them because I feel so guilty. So yeah, I mean, it was talking about things I ordinarily wouldn't talk about, and usually anybody pre-accident, anyone could ask me about anything I ever went through, and I would be happy to talk to them about it. But I wasn't someone who'd volunteer to talk about that. I kept things really close, but when you go through it, you kind of say to yourself, if I don't share what I went through to help other people, then what I went through is a complete waste and dies with me. And there's a responsibility that you go through when you go through an accident and near-death experience, that you owe something. It doesn't come free. And I want that. And it's a responsibility that I'm willing to take on and I want to take on. Because yeah, lots of people are struggling out there with whatever it is, and I kind of just feel like if I'm selfish and don't share it, then it was a waste for me to go through it. So
Well, thank you for that. I want to make sure you feel some gratitude coming from my way. I think it's extremely important for you to come to terms with that, right? And be able to say, hey, like this. Not that it would be a waste. Let's be, let me say that. I don't think it would be a waste if you didn't, share this story and help others. But it makes it so much more impactful. It makes it so much more important in the grand scheme of things in your life and in others that you are willing to share this story and willing to talk to people and have that conversation. Go up on stage and relive this experience over and over again. Write that story and relive all of these experiences through, written word. And as you said, every single night you're in a really bad mood. It's like, oh yeah, well, because I'm talking about all the things that were really terrible. But I am very much a positive person. I hate negativity. And the fact that you were able to take something as negative as practically dying and turning it into an opportunity and a positive experience, not only for yourself, but for those around you and for people you'll never, ever, ever meet, and allow them to understand what you went through so that they could potentially make themselves 1% better every day. I want to say thank you, Jason, for doing that, because I think that's extremely commendable. And I think that is one of the better things that you could possibly do. And yes, it makes it probably a little bit easier for you to sleep at night knowing it wasn't all a waste. It makes that so much sweeter now that you've come out this other side and you're able to now do all the things that you love doing and be able to give so much more on top of it. So thank you, Jason.
no worries, man. I say it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I say that 100%. I'm better because I went through the crash and everything else, and what it forced me to do, reassess life, think about loved ones I wasn't spending enough time with, give me a new purpose where I felt like I was really lacking purpose in life. So it happened right at the right time, is what I say. That wind hit me at the right time, or wrong time, right time. I say the right time at 150 feet off the ground, and I'm better for going through all this. So I feel amazingly blessed to be able to go through an experience like this.
No such thing as a coincidence. I don't believe in them. So yes, everything does happen at the exact time for an exact reason. So, well, I mean, we've talked about your story. We talked about the book a little bit. I'm sure you go significantly deeper into the story and a lot of other things. Where can we buy the book? Where is it? Where is it about?
Sure. If you want to go on my website, jasondennen.com, I'll sign it for you. I'll put a message in there for you, specific to you. So if you want to go there, you could also go to barnesandnoble.com and amazon.com. It's on there. So whatever is easiest for you. But I will sign it if you send it to me. And if you want to check out my website, see all the social media linked and where I'm speaking and where I'm appearing and all those types of things, go for it.
I love that. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say you probably make more money when the book is ordered from your website. Am I frozen or are you frozen?
I think you froze for a second.
Am I back? Okay. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
out on a limb and say you probably make more money when the book is ordered directly from your website.
That's true.
Okay, cool.
That
So
is
I'll
true.
put all the links down there, but I'm going to put that one first just in case. And then that way people can get it signed from you. So how perfect is that? So I think that's awesome, man. I'll put everything in the show notes for everyone in the description on YouTube for anyone to check that out. I think it's really important and fantastic. I'm extremely excited as well to receive my copy, which I should be expecting here in the next couple days. So it should be a lot of fun.
Saturday. I think it's Saturday.
Let's
Yeah.
go. Perfect, man. Well, thank you so much. Anything else? I mean, this was awesome. Really appreciate your time. Time's the only thing we don't get more of, and if I'm saying that to someone like yourself, I say that at every episode, but I think it means maybe just a little bit more to you. Time's the only thing we don't get more of, so I really appreciate yours today, Jason. I appreciate the entire audience for checking this out and listening a little bit more, but other than that, man, hope you have a great rest of your day. I appreciate it.
You too. Thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. Yeah, I had a great day. You're the highlight of my day, so I appreciate it.
You're the highlight of mine, Jason. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Bye.